All right, there we go. Keys to Home, episode 12. We're a dozen in. Lance is not here. He must have gotten the nastiness that's running around, but I feel immensely better. So hopefully he doesn't have it long. And you're still remaining healthy and hale?
Yeah, I've been knocking on wood. I've had my share of those little bouts. So hopefully everyone recovers quickly.
Yeah, it was, I swear I couldn't keep a thought in my head. Like I'd be like, oh, I need to. And then I'd go to write it down. I'm like, whoop, there it goes. I don't know. It was ridiculous. So we're back to the beginning, but just like all things, you can go to, the movie and it's a different experience each time or what have you. So this time we're going to be talking about the path to home buying. I do actually have my longer presentation pulled up. Not that I'm going to go through it all because it's like 45 minutes, but I want to talk about just kind of break down each part and then scan over some of the rest or skim over. What's been going on with you this last week?
It's been crazy. I've kind of branched off into career coaching, and so now I'm financial coaching, career coaching, and the number of people that I've onboarded for career coaching has been significant. Don't want to give exact numbers, but it's more than one. But so people are getting. They're taking action.
Yeah.
Are
these people who are changing jobs because they want a different lifestyle and or income, or are these people who were attritioned because their jobs were changing?
I have a couple of those. A couple of people that have been affected by the layoffs. But the majority of things that I'm finding and people that are asking the people that I onboarded, it's a disconnect. They're realizing there's a disconnect between what they really have a passion for, what their skills are for, what they and the values that they have versus what the company provides or government provides, and even their immediate supervisors. And so drawing that disconnect is what's at the root cause of a lot of their unhappiness. And I've been able to connect that to their financial situation, because if you're unhappy in your job, you're more than likely, what I've found, not making progress in your finances. It's not a fluid situation that is set up for success. You don't like doing this, therefore you don't want to do that.
Right. It's hard. It's harder to be overall happy. What was the quote I heard today at one of my networking meetings? It was really good. Let me see here. I think it's on the back side of this. If I can't find it in the next 5 seconds, we'll just skip.
Okay.
Nope, I'll have to come back to it. One of the things that I say is frustration. I think that's how it went. It was the definition of frustration. I've always said is when expectation does not meet reality.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I try and talk to people when we're buying and selling a home. What are your expectations for me? That's one of my slides. What are your expectations for me? And if I'm not hitting them, what's no? What are your expectations for the house? What are you expecting to find? What are you expecting to pay for it? And I want to make sure that we're all dealing with reality, so we're not frustrated. But the quote today was, happiness is removing expectations from reality.
Yeah.
It was an interesting way to stand on it. But if you are in a situation like you're saying at a job where you cannot be happy, or a house where you're just not going to be happy, then you need to change that reality. And, it's not always about changing expectations. It's okay to make a larger change sometimes, than just a mindset change.
Yeah, exactly. And I like the title of our episode here, Committing to Buying a Home, because committing to buying a home is not just as easy as saying, I want to buy a house.
Right.
Well, if you're going to commit to buying a home, you've got to understand the particulars about this. And secondly, it's not apartment shopping.
Yeah.
There's down payments that need, there's a whole slew of things.
It's a contractual obligation. And so many people, I think if you ask most people, do you know anybody in your lifetime who's gotten in trouble with a lease? They're going to say yes. They know somebody who is screwed off with a lease.
Yep.
But the number of people who don't understand, and I don't know why, it's not buying a car. When you buy a house, there are multiple contracts. That's one of the things that I'm actually going to talk about. Speaking of contracts, I told you that the weekend before the election was the most bound contracts that my brokerage offices had since 22. This last weekend blew that out of the water.
Wow. Yeah.
Like it's going on. So anyway, and I don't have a lot of excitement to say, well, I shouldn't say that. I was sicker than a dog last week, but this next week I'm closing numbers 6, 7, and 8 for the year. And we're how many days in? 90 days in. So,
not even 90 days.
Yeah, I'll take that. My goal is always to do at least 2 to 3 a month. So I'm doing 2 to 3 a month, I guess.
Yeah,
actually, I'm doing twice that, and you have ebbs and flows, so you try and stack up. So anyway, well, I'm going to share the screen here for a second if I can. I have ADD and I come from a long line of teachers. So this is the buyer's orientation that I do when I sit down with any buyer, even if you've bought with me before. If you're buying and selling, we do this and the listing presentation. If you've sold with me before but haven't bought with me before, we focus more on this. If you've bought with me before but haven't sold with me before, we may do longer on the listing side, but we're still going to cover this because things change. And it's a refresher. There's so much that happens in a 30-day span when you're buying a house. So, just to reacquaint the folks who are watching, Suburbia, that's that top house. I've done a lot of older homes. That house was from 1888. I play in the country. That was that middle picture on the left was a 30-some acre barn dominium that was originally built by an engineer. Great find for a young couple. And then the condominium, a lot of my first-time buyers end up in condos or smaller homes. Lance and I are there with one of my favorite and my youngest first-time buyer. That's my son, William. And then myself. And I always tell people you're going to know more than my face and my name by the end of this. So why do I do this buyer's consultation? Most agents have started doing these now because of the lawsuits and everything. But I have done these since 2016 because I wanted people to understand what I was bringing to the table, that we were working on a team, the process involved, and what I expected from them. So at our consultation, we're going to have a discovery. We're going to educate you on how I do things. We're going to do a case study, which is what's going on in the market today for what you're wanting to do. And then we're going to reach an agreement, which is a contract, and we're going to review that. Is that cut off at the bottom there?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. And then let's see here. So there are 3 agreements in real estate, but they're really playing with each other differently since August. This is what we talked about last time. There's a listing agreement that's between the seller and their listing agent. There's a purchase and sale agreement. That is the agreement between the buyer and the seller. And then there's a buyer's agreement or buyer's representation agreement. And that is the agreement between the buyer and their agent when they hire them. So in Tennessee, before August, did you need an agent? Yes, because everybody naturally was a facilitator. There's no implied agency. But now to unlock a door, as everybody knows, you have to have a buyer's agency in place. And that allows me to work on your best, in your best interest and advocate on your behalf. By law, that's my duties. And it allows me to fully negotiate for you without limitations. I represent only you and your interest. We are committed, which is the committing to buying a home, to working for each other exclusively. The agreement is required by my state. by my broker and now federally. And it gives me the ability to negotiate on your behalf. And that includes negotiate for the seller to pay for my compensation that you have agreed to pay me in our agreement. Let me see here really quick. I don't know what I'm doing. I've clicked on something over at the side instead of where I meant to click. Next page. That's what I was trying to do. Okay. I have duties to my clients. I have to obey your lawful instruction. I have to schedule properties and showings. Now, we both have schedules, but I'm pretty good at jumping and running. But if you call me, at 8:00 in the morning and want to see something at 9, that may be a little difficult with my schedule, drive time, and certainly the seller approval. Sometimes it works and sometimes, it does not. And I'm really good about communicating, what's going on and what are you looking for and what times a day are you wanting to see. I have to receive all offers, forward them to you, and counters in a timely manner. I have to answer within my abilities. There's a whole sheet called a disclaimer. I call it the Jennifer Doesn't Know sheet. I had an insurance license. My dad had an agency for 30 years. But I'm not necessarily in a position to tell you all the ins and outs of insurance. I'll be like, you need to talk to them. Or Lance, you need to talk to him on this. Client has duties too. Purchase your property exclusive through the broker through me when you sign that agreement during the term of that. It's a bilateral agreement. Either party can cancel with written notice, at any time. You have to furnish the broker in a timely manner, or the lender, the financial things that they're needing. The client has to agree that they're not already under contract with another buyer's agent. You can't be committed to two different agents. If the client utilizes services of another broker or deals actively with the seller's agent or seller, if it's a for sale by owner, the buyer is liable to pay both agents' commission. So if you've hired me and then you go out to a new construction without me, or you call for sale by owner or anything like, or go to an open house or any of those things, and you make a contract with someone else while we're under contract, you technically owe me my compensation as well, even though I'm not the one working the file. So I always tell my people, it's right here in my thing, don't do that. The list agent, person's name on the sign, the person sitting in the new construction, their legal duty is to the seller, the builder, not to you. I am your designated agent. Designated agent means that I'm working for Benchmark. Your contract is actually with Benchmark, not with me. And Benchmark has designated that I'm the agent. And the reason is, if we were both agents at Benchmark, Mark, and I was not a designated agent and I was buying your listing as a Benchmark agent, then there's a conflict of interest because we're both Benchmark holds the listing and Benchmark holds the buyer. So that's why it's a designated agency, which is another thing that sometimes comes up. And I share this with my clients too. What happens if you are interested in one of my listings? What do I do? Usually the first person I took to the dance, which is usually the listing, is who I stay with.
Yeah.
Let's say I have an upcoming and you're like, oh, that sounds like something I really want. Then I can go to the seller if I have not signed a listing with them and say, hey, I was telling somebody about what we've got coming up. Would you be interested in being unrepresented and me representing the buyer? Would you be interested in me facilitating, which I hate to do because you're not allowed to give agency advice. And I'm such a teacher that it could naturally happen. And then I'm in a difficult situation. Or would you like, I can say to the buyer, would you like, if you buy this house at 123 Main Street and I'm going to list it, we'll find a buyer's agent from my brokerage, usually my broker or someone I've mentored that can write the contract for this home with you. Because how do you deal with that? I'm not going to double side. Financially, it would not be bad to double side, but ethically, I don't know how people do it very well. I'm not going to go through all this roadmap of buying and selling the home, the process. Well, I guess I could really quick. You make a decision. We meet and we decide to have agency. As soon as that happens, I send out an email that says, hey, thanks for having a buyer's orientation meeting with me. Here's a copy of the buyer's representation agreement, not able to sign. We're going to read this over, and then you can sign it when you understand it. And if you have any questions or need anything changed, let me know. But I also send a copy of the purchase and sale and the disclaimer I talked about and the wire fraud warning and the importance of inspections and the other docs. They're called ancillary docs that go with a purchase and sale. Now, people want to know how's buyer's representation being paid right now. I'm going to see if I can remove this real quick. Seller used to pay for buyer's agency, right? And I told you, I think on our first one, well, what are you doing? Reaching in your wall and pulling out a couple thousand to pay the agents? Because I want to see if I have that hidey hole. Nothing goes anywhere until the buyer's cash or loan gets to the seller and liquefies their equity in their house. But now that's not the way. The federal government wants the buyer and the seller to negotiate with their agents how much they're paying them. And then each other how much they're buying this house for and what's involved in that. Now, in the involved in that, I can say, Mark, I'm going to offer you $500,000 for your home, and I want the refrigerator, and I want the fire pit, and I want the hot tub, and I'll close on this day. I'll finish my inspections within 10 days. We can negotiate back and forth within 5 days. I need an appraisal. If it doesn't match, we're out. I'm having a loan. If anything falls through with that, then this is cancelable with the return of my earnest. And hey, you know what? Rates are really high. And so to get the rate I need, my closing costs are actually XYZ from Lance. And I have my down of 15,000 because I'm putting 25,000 because I'm putting 5% down. But I need 5,000 and I have some other closing costs, but I need 5,000 more from you. So in the cost of this 500,000, I would like you to give me 5,000 in closing costs. Now, previously, when you listed your home, you pre-stated what you were going to offer to the buyer's agent. Yeah. But now I'm saying, hey, I owe my agent, 2, 3, 5, 20 million, whatever, $10,000, whatever the amount is I owe, whether it's a percent or a flat amount. And so I've got the money for my down payment. I have a lot of my money for my closing costs, but I need you to help me with some closing costs. And I'd also like to see, will you pay for my buyer's agency out of this $500,000 that I'm offering you for your house? So what bucket of money from the seller is it coming from? Let's say you're like, I was prepared to maybe pay some closing costs. My agent told me that might happen in this price point, that sometimes people need that with our current market situation. And I was prepared to pay a certain percent for your buyer's agency, your buyer's agent compensation. But apparently your agreement with your agent is a higher percent than what I was prepared to do. So maybe you say, instead of 500, how about if we do 510, and then I will pay you 5,000 of your closing costs, and I will pay your buyer's agent compensation. And then the buyer can come back and go, oh, okay, which that brings up something else really quick, and then I'll let you ask any questions too, because I know you haven't bought in Tennessee. A lot of times I get this question from out-of-state buyers. What percent of your compensation are you cutting back to me?
Yeah.
Does that happen in Texas?
I don't know.
Like, let's say that you owe me $12,000 as compensation, and you're like, what of that are you going to give back to me? This agent said you're going to give me $2,000 or $3,000 back. In Tennessee, that's illegal. I've had friends who have been like, hey, I sent you that lead. What are you going to give me for it? Well, I'm not allowed to give you money for a real estate referral like that in Tennessee. So my answer is always, well, I'm going to bring a really good agent to the transaction for you. And I can't lose my license because I wouldn't be able to help you or other folks. So I'm not going to cut you back any compensation. But I promise you that the transaction, I'll more than prove my worth for what I've agreed to negotiate with. So that was something that comes up periodically in Tennessee.
I don't know, honestly, Jennifer, I'm not sure how it works in Texas. that sounds like they're allowed to do that, but I don't quote me on it. I mean, we'd
I
have
know
to.
California is. The buyer's agent can assist with closing costs in certain situations. They can assist with a buy down. That's one of the things that Lance and I can do for our, we do a lot for our first responders and our teachers and military and things like that. But there's pretty tight controls on what's allowed to happen in Tennessee. So,
Well, when we're preparing to buy a house and you're committing to buy a house, if the people listening to this right now, if all you're going to do is go in with, I'm going to meet the bare minimums in preparing to buy the house, you really need to rethink that.
Yeah.
Because, if you're going in and you're losing scope of why you're buying a house because you're worried about, well, it has to be this. There is no movement. There is no wiggle room.
Yeah.
You're probably not ready.
No, and that's why I always say, like, what's your objective? What are you looking for in a house? Because there's more than one way to get from point A to point B. That's one of the things you hire me to help you navigate is, you want to not rent anymore, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about with buyers' expectations when buying a house. So I won't get too deep in it now, but you don't want to be renting anymore. Okay. So, I think I told you my first listing was a rental, and I'd ask people, well, why are you buying instead of renting? Well, I can't afford to buy. Well, you're putting down first and last. Yeah. And your credit, this guy wants a certain credit and all of that, you could probably do a USDA or a THDA or one of those kinds of zero down programs. So what's your overall objective and how do we get to it? And I, in my buyer's orientation, I say, we're working as a team to get your goal. And one of the things, just like you, is I help qualify what your goal is. What is it that we're trying to do? And I'm sure this happens with your people too. We think we're looking for something, but along the way, hey, this works maybe better or would work as well. So we're going to go 2-prong. Now, when you get too many prongs going on, it gets a little crazy. I could build, or I could do this, or I could do this. And I'm like, we need a little bit of focus. We need to figure out. And that's why I do the needs and wants analysis.
When you focus on one thing at a time and you complete that, then you move. My clients get progress because they're not trying to do. It reminds me of the second best book on the face of the planet when it comes to finances. We all read the book as a kid, and outside of the Bible, in my opinion, that's book number one. The second best book on the face of the planet for finances is the story about the tortoise and the hare. Mm-hmm. The hare is running around looking for all of the quick fixes and all of the extra stuff, while the tortoise is just methodical, one step after another, focusing on one thing, and that is completing the race.
Now, I am going to challenge you on that. I think part of the illustration that applies to this is the hare is hopping lots of directions and stopping and getting distracted and, swanning about and things like that. If you think about how a cat stalks and pounces, sometimes in real estate, you need to move quickly. You do. Need to be prepared, you need to be ready, and you need to strike fast and hard and objectively. So I would say I'm never going to rush you. But if we're out seeing houses and this is checking off these boxes, I'm going to look at you and I'm going to say, if you like this one, don't delay. While you think about it overnight, somebody else was thinking about it yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody else was thinking about it this morning, or somebody else has missed out on a house and knows this one is a good one. I don't say that all the time, but if you hear me say, don't wait on this one, it means it's very advantageously priced. It hits your needs and you need to move forward.
The theme of the title, Committing to Buy a Home. again, whoever is listening to this, it's not that we're just now starting, to go out there and start looking at houses and I think I might buy. And you haven't had a conversation about what you're doing. You don't understand the scope of what you're doing. All of that is part of committing to buy a home. You've already had, if it's a husband and wife, you've already had the hard conversation about we're going from a rental property. We're no longer going to have this lease. We're buying a home. We're going to be fixed at this location.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the lease gets, if we don't like what we're living in, it's not like the lease ends and you can go move somewhere else.
Well, and that applies for a second home too. Like we have had these discussions. We know now. I will tell you, husbands and wives are often not on the same page, surprisingly, on what they're looking for. I'm going to add something else to the stage too, because I told you these are contracts, and people don't understand that. I don't understand why people get the concept that they're signing a lease and it's a contract when they do that. It's sometimes 2 to 4 pages. That our buyers. This is our part of our purchase and sale agreement, and it's 11 pages now, maybe 12, and then sign lines on 13. But do you see this says loan obligation? I don't know if I can blow that up any. This is just on the second page, line 63 through 84. This is part of the federal government's rules for lending. Within 3 days, you're going to a binding agreement. You're going to do X, Y, and Z. Now, this part actually you're going to do with me before we go out and shop, because I want to make sure that I'm doing my job, which part of it when I bring somebody to a listing to see it is bringing a ready, willing, and able buyer. So the willing depends on what they see when they get there, but they have to be ready and they have to be able. Then within 14 days, it says you're going to order your appraisal and you're going to get your insurance and you're going to pursue your qualification and you're going to get your continuing and immediately give your lender the documents they need. Unless otherwise stated, you don't have a home to sell in order to fulfill this contractual obligation. And they're not going to intentionally make any material changes in your finances or your credit. We've talked about that before, but this is just part of the document. And that's one reason that I send a copy of the purchase and sale to my buyers after my buyer's consultation. Because when you bought your house, how fast between when you saw it and said, yes, I'm going to buy it, to when your agent was starting to type up the contract and send it to you?
I mean, it was yesterday.
It was like an hour to 2 hours, depending on how fast they can type one up, And so you need to be aware of what that is. But the other part is you have to have trust in your agent that you hire, that you commit to. Because one of the things that I'm going to be doing is going, hey, Mark, it's day 11. What insurance are you? Hey, Mark, it's day 5. Have you ordered the termite and home inspection? Hey, Mark, it's this. Have you done this? To make sure you're abiding by your contractual obligations. And again, you may hear me say that phrase when you're not listening to me. Mark, you have signed, and it'll come in an email. Mark, you have signed a contract that said you will do this, this, and this. I can't get an answer from you. You are in danger of potentially breaking your contractual obligation, which could have ramifications. Please contact me or a lawyer.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, Jennifer, in the spirit again of the title of our episode here is you're not going into this thing blind. You're going into this educated. You understand that
my clients sure are.
You understand that one of the largest expenses in our lifetime is buying a home, and the difference is that renting is temporary. Buying a home is more permanent. It's not completely 100% permanent because you can always resell it, or move. But a lease, it gets renewed every year. The mortgage does not get renewed every year unless you refinance it.
Usually 15 to 30.
And you're not going to do that. The fact of the matter is that when you when you're buying a house and you're committing to buying a home, you've already had the hard conversations about what it is that you're doing. Not ordering that stuff, not doing those things is not part of that has long been decided a long time ago.
Right.
If anyone's listening to this now going, well, I didn't know that I needed to do that. That tells you need to have conversations about what it is that you're getting ready to sign and obligate yourself to.
Right. And the thing is, there are contingencies in place but as a buyer, you have to think about the seller. And as a seller, you have to think about the buyer too.
Yep.
What I mean by that is, if you were the seller and you took your home off the market, we don't have, what did they call that money? I think they have it in Texas. Not earnest money, the other money.
I know
they have it in Georgia and they have it in a couple other states, and it's money that the buyer gives to the seller, and sometimes it's refundable and often it is not.
That sounds like earnest money.
No, this earnest money is different. Earnest money is contractual money. This money is, I'm taking my home off the market for you.
Oh,
you better be serious about it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And people can lose it if they walk away from it. Earnest money is dispersed according to that is too, but this is earnest money is based on, trust me, I'm in earnest about fulfilling my contract, but there's this other money and I'll think of it for next time. But you're not just going into things haphazardly,
right.
So, and I'll tell you, one of the things that gets people, I think, into problems when they're buying a house, with the contract is listening to other people. And it's actually a legal situation called tertiary interference, which means third-party interference. So if you and I have a contract and Lance comes up to you and goes, Mark, Jennifer's full of it, and you need to be watching yourself, and you need to not listen to what she says, and you end up breaking your contract with me because of him, and not doing it through, an approved method, so to speak, then you can get yourself into difficulty with that. And that person, like, I could actually sue that person for doing that as well. I mean, not that I necessarily would, but that's part of the problem. That's one of the problems realtors have.
When you're talking a $5 million home, that might be a different discussion.
It doesn't even matter if it's $5 million. The seller can sue for different things. But compensation, you entered into a contract with me, and then you end up in a situation where you've broken it, you've gone off to an open house, you didn't pay attention, or your dad's like, oh my God, this inspection's horrible, run, and you don't do it the appropriate ways or what have you. But as an agent, even though I may have the right to pursue you for action, how does that look? Even if I told you a story and said, this, and this is what happened, you'd be like, oh, well, yeah, Jennifer, you'd be in the right to do that. But anyone who didn't know me would just be like, this agent did what?
Right.
So we're kind of at the mercy. Plus, we don't get paid until it closes, which is one of the reasons that I want my clients to understand what's involved in my work for them, what's involved in the process for them, so that they're willing to commit to me, to commit to the process, to tell me if things are going on. Something just floated in and out of my head about the committing to things too.
They get scared. And because you're signing legal documents, contractual, and again, it comes back to understanding and knowing what it is that you're doing. It's not just, and you're right. When you go to an apartment complex, I think it's how many people skim the document, then start complaining about something only to find out that it's in their lease.
Yeah. Well, and then, I have sometimes people, oh my God, Jennifer, you're realtors, you're a real estate attorney, I'm renting, and I've got black mold in this house, and the landlord's not doing anything, and I'm going to quit paying my rent and take them to court. My understanding is you better not quit paying rent and take them to court, because now you've both broken the lease.
Right.
And you're in the bad situation too.
Right.
So there are other things to do, but it's hard because you're in this situation where you're like, well, I can't afford to stay here and pay for the new, I can't do both.
Yeah.
And, so it's hard.
It is hard, but
adulting.
It is hard, but and that's part of this process. Buying a home is a commitment that you're making to the point that you're saying, I'm not going to be leaving here anytime soon. You're putting, it's if you before you commit, and you've got to understand the what it is that you're purchasing. But once you understand those pros and cons and those risks and those rewards, and you're engaged with a realtor like yourself, being open and honest about situations that come up is the only way that you are going to get to move forward in any part of this, because you can't back out without ramifications. And when you move forward, if you don't understand what you're doing, you're buying a home. It's a permanent thing. It's not like you can just say, I really don't like this apartment. I think I'm going to leave next year.
Right. Well, and you can, and the thing is, just like if you skip down on a lease, that's going to have ramifications. It's going to come after you for years, right? Just same thing if you default on a mortgage, it's going to come after you for years. And then some people are like, oh, I don't want to buy because I don't want to pay a mortgage. I don't want to pay I don't want to pay real estate taxes. I don't want to pay maintenance. Well, guess what? In a rent, in a lease, you're paying that. It's just not yours.
Right.
So, I don't want people to hear this all and be scared off from buying, because when knowledge is power, and you can do this, you can become a homeowner. You can buy your next home, because we always talk to our first timers, but you can also buy that next home or that investment home or whatever it is. But let's just make sure that you understand where we are right now, real estate works in today's market with Jennifer in Tennessee. That's the point of my buyer's consult. That's why I said, even if you bought a house with me when I started in 2014, we're still having a buyer's consult because things have changed.
Yeah. I don't think that any of this is leading, it's driving home, that the title of our episode, being committed to buying a home. You're not going in 45% sure. Or 75% sure.
Now you may be 90% sure, but the 10% is actually not unsure. It's scared sometimes. That's right. Okay. It's the unknown, but we're here to hold hands.
Well, you're not walking in with, I think I might, because I'm just not sure.
Yeah. You don't accidentally buy a home.
Right. Exactly. Well, as we come to a close on this, Jennifer, what can you recap? Is the things that are important about committing to buying a home?
So get with an agent who is committed to you. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I want people who are committed to me and who I'm committed to, because I only have so much bandwidth and time. I told you I'm getting ready to close my 6th, 7th, and 8th contract in how many days? 60 days.
Yep.
That's some time commitment. I have time to commit to anybody who's willing to commit to me, but I have to make sure that you're ready and that we're on the same page. I'm not going to rush anybody.
Right.
But we're not going to go and waste time either.
Right. Exactly.
It's
the same thing for me with financial coaching. I know that you want to get to point B. I know you don't want to be in that place where you're at. I've constantly messaged this same thing over and over and over again. But in order to get to that thing that you want, in order to get to the home that you want, you're going to have to say and ask yourself, what am I willing to give up in order to get there?
Yeah.
If you're going,
and there might not be that much that you're giving up. You might be giving up calling somebody else at 2 a.m. to come fix your plumbing.
Right.
You might be giving up a coffee a week.
Right.
You don't know. I mean, it could be big, it could be little, but I will tell you this, home ownership is the best path to financial security and wealth in our country.
It
And
is.
so what you may give up, big or small, it's going to be worth it for you and the future generations, as
Right.
long as you do it correctly. And I don't mean just the purchase part. I mean the staying in it part. And that's the other thing too. One of our thing was don't panic. And we have another one coming up called housing expectations. Don't jump to something that's not going to fit you, or there are houses that make very good rentals because they have something that most people would not want to buy.
Right.
Sometimes it's a power line in the backyard. Sometimes it's just a wonky layout.
Right.
Don't be so desperate to buy a house that you get into something that's difficult to sell later. Now you bought it. So, like I have people who don't care about high tension wires or a cemetery in the backyard or whatever it is. So there will be, but it's a smaller buyer pool.
Yep.
Just don't jump when you're not sure of the facts.
Right.
Right. Like I said, that's my job. Knowledge is power. Let's get you ready. Like that cat, let's get you ready, strong, identify your target, and get it.
Absolutely. That's a great way to end the episode. If everyone, for anyone that's watching right now, you can contact Lance, Jennifer, and myself through the numbers and the website scrolling at the bottom of your screen. Jennifer, I thought this was a fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
I think that the number of people that we're here to help, it's just a matter of reaching out, posting a comment, and saying, hey, I'd like to know a little bit more about that.
Yep. Now, speaking of knowing more, next week is going to be Lance talking about loans and the process. We're not going to necessarily be going straight into, I think it's the process, not the types. And he may go deeper into positioning yourself. We've talked about the algorithms and getting things ready and what to do. And, like this week I went with my daughter and there was something reporting on her credit from her old apartment that was incorrect. They changed systems. Yeah. They changed accounting systems the month she moved out. And so one system showed that she had paid her last month rent and one didn't. And so we didn't know. We didn't pull her credit in the last 3 years. It's showing a $1,200 collection. Well, now that's getting removed. So things like that, how to clear things up, what the process is of application. And then following that, we're going to talk with you about budgeting and getting from not yet to yes again. And then circle back through, obviously, questions and answers whenever anybody has them, we'll pop those up as well, and things that occur during our week. So we're done being committed for the day.
Absolutely. I think great way to end the call. It was a great conversation. And
yeah, very much. And hopefully Lance gets better and you don't get ill.
Yeah, exactly. And anyone that's watching, just again, if you have any questions, reach out to any one of us. We'll be happy to help you and or direct you to the right person.